I have a new Kickstarter that is going to launch on 1 March. And this is for the Lazy DM's Forge of Foes. This is a book to help you build, modify, ponder, design, and run monsters for your 5e fantasy role-playing games. I am doing this book in partnership with Scott Fitzgerald Gray and Teos Abadia, two brilliant designers. All of us have come together over the past year and have been writing all different topics that relate to building, customizing, and running monsters for your 5e game. Down in the show notes, you can find a link to be notified the minute the Kickstarter goes live. When it does, you will have access to the free 30-page preview that we are putting out, but I'm going to give you a preview of the preview right now. This is the cover of the book. The preview covers a number of different chapters that we have there, showing a variety of the kinds of things you're going to find in the main book. We have the full table of contents here, so if you want to see exactly every chapter that's going on in this book, you can see it here. A common question that I've gotten is how much of it is specific to 5e and how much it is usable for other games. The answer is about a third of it is focused on 5e, and 2/3 of it is really usable for any fantasy role-playing game that you happen to be playing. It is definitely focused on fantasy role-playing more so than science fiction, but even some of the techniques that you find in here are really universal to any tabletop role-playing game. But certainly we had 5th edition fantasy games in our minds when we were writing the book, and a lot of the crunchy bits are definitely around 5th edition fantasy. Introduction, we talk about why we made this book, who it's for, what we're doing it for, what do we even constitute as kind of a foe, because we use a lot of terms like monster, creature, and foe sort of interchangeably, so we describe that here. And how do you use this book? What is the way for you to get the most value out of this book in the shortest amount of time? First section, we want to go right off with a bang. Give you tools that you can use right now to build a monster that for your game very quickly. You can either use this to build or modify monsters. Very quick framework to do so. Gives you step-by-step instructions for how to do it. First thing, determine your challenge rating. So there's a big table in here, and we talk about what all of the columns of the table mean. Then building a monster step by step. Step 1, determine its challenge rating. Do you even need a challenge rating is one of the arguments. You can also say, well, what's kind of an equivalent monster to a character level? That's why we have a column for equivalent character level. That is in there. Step 2, write down the baseline statistics from the table that you find there. Step 3, figure out which of its abilities it's proficient in, what's it good at, what it's not. Determining any remaining abilities, and you're ready to go. You're done. Then you can do that very, very quickly. You can do that on a 3x5 card, and you can do it very, very quickly. But the other thing is to consider armor class. So we have a default armor class, but you really think armor class is more about what kind of armor the monster has. Certainly, the higher challenge rating the monster does not necessarily correlate to a high armor class. It could have a low armor class, because if it's a giant slime monster, might not have a very high armor class. So you can consider change the armor class up or down. Basic idea is like 10 is really low, 20 is really high. Then the table itself. So this is the table. It goes all the way from CR0 to CR30. It has an equivalent character level, which is kind of like what, if you were to have 4 characters of a given level, what monsters would be the equivalent of those characters in sort of a hard fight? What would be their challenge rating? So we're doing the direct comparison of challenge rating to level in this table. That is, of course, a loose guide, and it's kind of around a hard encounter, built around a hard encounter. We have their armor class and DC. Armor class and DC are pretty much the same thing, so you can use the same number for both. Again, you can change armor class to fit what fits the story. Hit points. How many hit points does this particular monster have? What's its proficient ability bonus? So this includes its primary ability and its proficiency in one score. It's the only one you need to worry about. And that's like what's its attack bonus or what's its spell attack bonus or something like that. How much total damage does it do in the round? This is a baseline. This gives you an idea of the total amount of damage, but then we break that down into a number of attacks and specific damage. So that way you don't have to worry about going in and figuring out how many attacks at how much damage based on damage per round. We've done the work for you and said, if you're going to run a CR3 monster, give it 2 attacks that do 12 damage and you're set. And then we say, what are example 5e monsters that meet this challenge rating? The benefit of this is you can get a general idea very quickly about how hard the story of a monster is compared to the challenge rating. So a frost giant, like if you say, is my monster roughly the equivalent of a frost giant, then it would be CR8. If it's more the equivalent of an ogre, then it's only a CR2. If it's the equivalent of, an adult black dragon or an ice devil, then it's CR14. So this is to help you take the story element and convert it back to the numbers, right? That's a handy way to have it. So that whole table is there. Again, this is in the sample chapter. You can download it for free. I very much hope you will enjoy what you see here and back the book. But even if you don't, you can go ahead and use this at your table right away. You'll be able to grab it March 1st. If you're a patron, you will be getting an email very shortly, probably Monday, to get access to this right away. So patrons are going to get access to this right away. If you've been in the Patreon Discord, you already have access. Then you can customize the attacks. You can decide, do they do some of it fire damage, some of it normal damage? These are all optional. These are sort of add-ons. Basically, you're thinking about the resolution of your monster. Maybe it's just a big blob of clay. Maybe it's got some arms, but then you're like, maybe you're tweaking out the weapons and stuff like this. So the more time you spend, the more rich your monster is, but you don't necessarily need to do all of them. Customize the attacks. Give it like, maybe it's a flaming greatsword. Take the damage that's here. So if it, we picked that example of the CR3 that does 2d8 plus 3. Maybe it does 1d8 plus 3 plus 1d8 fire. Right? You can split the damage types up. That fits a lot of the style. Then you can further modify the statistics, move things up and down if you want. If you want to give it more damage but less AC, you can certainly do that. And then we have types and features. So types are what kind of monster is it? And these are all the basic 5e monster types: aberrations, beasts, celestials, dragons, constructs, all that sort of thing. And every one of these, and Teos is the one that put this together. It's excellent stuff. So for every one of these, we have the base parameters that it has, like what are its senses, what kind of languages might it have, but then we gave it a specific like power, like a monster ability that shows why this thing is different than everything else. The aberrations might have grasping tentacles or a dominating gaze, for example. That would show what an aberration is like. A beast might have hit and run or empowered by carnage. Two different powers there. The celestial might have wings or mirrored judgment. Constructs might have armor plating or sentinel. Dragon, of course, has a dragon's breath or a dragon's gaze or draconic retaliation. Elements have elemental attacks and elemental aura. Fey creatures, teleporting step, beguiling aura. Fiends have empowered by death or relish your failures. So every one of the monster types has specific power. So you could just grab a type and say it's a monstrosity. I'll pick one of these. I'll add it to my monster. Now you got something that's really unique. So we have all of those for all of the different monster types. But then we also have some common monster powers. These are sort of general use. It doesn't have to be tied to a monster type. It makes this monster particularly unique. And that is things like damaging aura, damage weapon, defender, delights in suffering, frenzy, goes down fighting, lethal, mark the target, not dead, a whole bunch of these. Now, this is just a sample of what we're going to offer in the full book. So this is the quick build chapter, right? Right up front, we say, here's your quick build. You got everything you want. However, we got a whole chapter that's just tons of these. Teos has put together a whole ton of these, pages and pages and pages of them. So it's like a spell book for monsters. It's going to be really, really cool. I can't wait. So then we have some other chapters that show the kind of depth that we're going to have in this book. Reskinning Monsters talks about all the depths of how to reskin. By my opinion, the most powerful GM trait, the most powerful tool we can have in our toolbox is the idea of reskinning. This actually says, here are different monsters that you might use to reskin. They're very straightforward monsters. The neat thing about reskinning these monsters is you can grab one of these monsters and then go up and grab some of those powers from the previous chapter, drop it on there. Now you have something really unique. And that's the way this book works. It's a very modular book. The intent is that you can go from very, very fast and quick to expanding things out. You can come in from different angles. Do I build a monster from scratch? Do I take a monster that already exists? Very, very kind of grab the pieces you like and drop it together for your monster. And if you think about it, one of the things that I think really makes this book powerful, the thing that is going to make it much more valuable than the cost that you're going to pay for it, is it takes all of the monster books you already own and makes them exponentially more useful. Because now every monster you've got, whether it's the monster story that you have, or whether it's the stat block that you like, but you just want to add a little something or tweak a little something, this one lets you tweak it in all kinds of different ways. It gives you all kinds of tools to be able to do it. Really fantastic stuff. What if you just want to add a spell effect to a monster? This is something I really like, a really quick trick of taking a monster that you've got and then just adding a new spell to it. I did it and it makes them really, really unique, really powerful stuff. So all about reskinning. Choosing monsters based on the story. We have 2 chapters that show 2 different philosophies in how we approach our monsters in our 5e games. One, with the one that I tend to focus on, is you choose the monsters based on the story. I've talked about this all the time. Pick the monsters that fit the story and then worry about the mechanics. But Teos has another approach, which is also equally valid, of building the story to fit the monsters. So you have really cool monsters that you like. You have really cool, juicy effects that you like. What's the way to take those and expand those out and build the story around them to bring the characters to them in the story? Different angle, but equally valuable. So we offer a lot of different philosophical views in this one book to bring it all together. None of which are right or wrong, but all of which you can kind of pick and choose from. You can decide one day and decide the other another. That's great, right? Fully expansive. What are the example stories that we have here? And we have little breakout boxes that say, like, Mike notes that the act of building the story around an out-of-place monster pushes us away from the stereotypical situations. The very act of having to explain the weird occurrence of a creature's existence forces the GM to come up with a creative explanation they might never otherwise thought of. Examples like building engaging encounters. How do you make the encounter itself fun? What are some ways that you can treat this so that it's not just fighting a bunch of guys in a room? We have a whole chapter on that. Building engaging environments. How do you make the environment itself something interesting? We have a whole section on that. And then finally, the final chapter in this sample is building spellcasting monsters. What are ways for you to quickly make a spellcaster version of a monster? One of the most challenging bits that we have going on here. But very straightforward approach to easily make new spellcasting monsters. There it is. It's a 29-page sample preview of Forge of Foes. Again, down in the show notes below, you can find a link that will take you to the Kickstarter pre-launch page. Click notify me on launch. You'll get notified as soon as the Kickstarter is live. You can jump into the Kickstarter, find the free preview, download it, use it today. I hope you'll dig it. If you do, you can pick up the book either in PDF. We're going to have a hardcover version of the book, probably 128 to 144 pages. We're still figuring out the page count, but right around there. Hardcover version of the book. That's threadbound hardcover version of the book, offset printed. We will also have packages available where you can pick up all the Lazy DM books together, both in physical and in digital form. The physical one's going to be limited to about 1,000 copies based on the stock that we have on hand for those. Digital copies, of course, you can buy as many as you want. And we also have all of the products that Scott and Teos and myself offer are also going to be available in the backer kit as add-ons, so you can add on any of those things as well. The Kickstarter goes live on the 1st of March. You're going to hear me talk more about it, of course, but I'm really excited for it. It is a fantastic book. We've been working really hard on it, working on it for a year. We got a lot of cool art. We've got a lot of cool design, really, really neat stuff. And I think you're really going to love it.